Welcome to the Town of Avon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. If you are interested in having a copy of the agenda or the staff reports, they're available to the tables on the right of the audience. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and all cell phones are set to vibrate with any phone calls taken outside of the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during any public hearing, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to staff or the appellant. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. We do understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. The chair may therefore impose a time limit on each person. Federal law requires that the town make available to all attendees a Title VI public involvement survey. These surveys are on the table to the right of the audience. Members of the public who wish to complete the survey may do so and place them in the designated area. If because of a disability, any person in attendance needs assistance or accommodation to fully participate in this meeting, please notify staff. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can give it a roll call, please.
Paul Wickenberger.
Here.
Ann Inman. Here. Catherine Ransford. Marcy Tashler. Here. And Marcus Turner.
Here. Approval of the minutes from May 16th, 2023. Did anyone have any questions, concerns, recommendations?
I'll move to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
A motion by Mrs. Inman, second by Mr. Guckenberger. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is request for continuances or agenda modifications.
We have none.
Okay. Public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? And with no one coming forward, we will move on to, we have no old business, so we will move on to new business. First item is SE 23-04, Sudan Trucking Gravel Lot. Ian?
SE 23-04, Sudan Trucking Gravel Lot. Sudan Trucking Gravel Lot. This is a request for approval of a special exception to allow for a gravel off-street parking area for a proposed truck parking and maintenance facility. It's located at 8379 Kingston Street in Avon, Indiana. It's lot 2 of Infinity Subdivision. There's the parcel ID up on the screen, and it's a 3.14 acre lot. There is the property indicated by a star located on Kingston Street in between Casco Drive and Dover Street. Little history on the lot. It was platted under MIPP 1406 as a result of the Kingston Street extension project that led to the lot being divided into the way that it is now. It's remained vacant since. There is a variance request. It's in conjunction with this special exception request. That's VAR 2310 sedan trucking fence. And there's also a DPR on file, DPR 2306 sedan trucking, and that's scheduled for the June 26, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. Chapter 6.11E3 of the Unified Development Ordinance states that gravel parking areas may be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals through the special exception process. In addition to that, it tacks on some additional considerations. That same section states that in its review, the board considers the practical difficulty in developing a paved lot on the property, the location of the proposed gravel lot, and the period the gravel lot will be used. Those are additional considerations that aren't usually associated with the special exception request. Staff does find that the proposed use is consistent with the character of the surrounding area. There's an all-terrain landscaping to the north that has a gravel drive. CSX Railroad directly to the south of this property is predominantly gravel. Phoenix Fabricators, that says to the west, but it's actually to the east, also has a large gravel area. These are all intense industrial land uses that contain gravel lots for the purpose of storing large vehicles and heavy machinery. The advantage you get with gravel lots is better turning movements that degrade the surface less than if you were to have asphalt or concrete. We acknowledge two potential negative aspects associated with a gravel lot. The first one would be the release of dust into the air through wind or physical manipulation. Physical manipulation, of course, being the tires along the gravel. To address those concerns, staff does recommend a condition which requires that the lot be maintained at all times to control the release of dust. That's actually a performance standard in our ordinance already. This is just a reiteration of that performance standard, and it exemplifies staff's commitment to ensure that that performance standard is met. Some ways to release the control of dust would be periodic wetting of the gravel, screening or buffering at the property lines, which we have some of, and travel speed reduction. Trucks on this lot will not be moving very fast, and there's also chemical treatment options as well. The second potential negative aspect of the gravel lot is an unmanicured aesthetic. This is located on US 36, and it is commonplace for gravel lots to be viewed as less than pleasing to the eye, we shall say. But staff believes that with the required landscaping in conjunction with curbing and parking lot islands, the architectural design of the building, it will create a pleasing design. The entrance to the site and the area around the building does have heavy-duty concrete pavement. So the gravel portions of the lot will be further set back from Kingston Street, and we'll be able to take a look at that. And then additionally, parkway landscaping will reduce visibility of the gravel lot from Kingston Street roadway, alleviating the concerns regarding those aesthetics from the roadway. So here we have a depiction of the lot. The areas in yellow are heavy-duty concrete areas. So the entrance into the building and around the building will generally be concrete. We have some asphalt just in this parking area here, and the rest will be gravel. It's proposed to be gravel in green there. So the area on the west is set back a little further than would be here. It's about 50 feet to the right of way, if I recall correctly. And in addition to that, we also have all of these trees here, ornamental trees. They are maples and locusts, I believe, that will be planted there. And we will relate this back to the practical difficulty. Again, the ordinance states that you shall consider it, that the paved lot on the property, the location of the proposed gravel lot, and the period it'll be used. Staff does acknowledge that there may be a practical difficulty in unduly prohibiting the use of the lot in a way that's consistent with nearby surrounding land uses and the industrial district as a whole, when it has limited potential to create hazardous conditions or harm to the surrounding property owners. We find that the gravel lot shall be permitted to remain in perpetuity so long as it meets the performance standards outlined within Chapter 5.14I, dust and air pollution, and otherwise throughout the Unified Development Ordinance and other town codes. We do find that the proposal meets all of the required findings of fact, and we recommend approval of the special exception subject to the one following condition, that a gravel lot shall be maintained at all times so as to control the release of dust as per Chapter 5.14I, dust and air pollution. With that, I am available for questions.
Questions for staff?
So I guess I do have a question. Can you go back to the picture of the lot itself and just want to make sure what's gravel and what is concrete? That is?
That yellow is all concrete.
It's concrete.
Okay.
The red is asphalt.
All right, thank you. So when you made the determination of that this would meet the special exception, what's the evaluation that staff uses as far as not only current land use, but future land use to deviate from our standards?
The criteria that we use would be
All right, I mean, so we're looking at current use, but then looking at future use. Do you factor in future use around as far as like the surrounding lots? Because there's lots to be developed there, so the impact of future development?
No, I think we would just look at the use the way that it is composed of now. There is, I forget what finding, I think the last one asks us to look at the objectives of the comprehensive plan. So that could be the ordinance's way to take that look into the future and consider how this may be utilized in the future.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? We're right here from petitioner.
Yeah, as a housekeeping matter, I'm curious, as Ian met Andy Colt, Comer Law Office, 71 West Marion Street in Danville. Would it be of any interest to have the fence introduced? And I can just talk about the project since they're both DPR matters.
That's a great point. I'll leave it up to you all.
I know they have to be voted on separately, but if you just want to hear the.
You can go ahead. You can
Okay,
discuss it.
so I'll go ahead and continue. Thank you, Angel. The next up is VAR 2310, sedan trucking fence. This is a request for approval of a variance of development standards to allow for a fence in a front yard within Tier 3 of the US Highway 36 overlay zoning district. I'm going to skip the location. It is located at the same property as before. There it is there on Kingston Street. Same history there. Now, Chapter 2.1003D of the Town of Avon Unified Development Ordinance states that fences are prohibited within a front yard in the U.S. Highway 36 overlay. This property owner seeks to erect a fence around the property in order to protect the truck, trailer parking, and maintenance facility proposed to be developed on this lot. You may remember that this is very similar to the Ray Skillman Hyundai that I believe you heard last month, in which their request for a fence in the front yard was for the same objective, to protect the materials that are stored on that lot. Here's a depiction of the fence. I don't know how well you can see it. It is just basically the outline of the entire parking lot here. When it was brought to us, it did propose a chain link in the front, and we'll touch on that briefly. The intention of the US 36 Overlay Zoning District is to promote coordinated development and establish high standards of development of properties that promote quality, scale, and character while encouraging innovative site design and efficient land use. Staff finds that the approval of a fence in the front yard at this location would be consistent with the surrounding developments in the area. As we discussed last meeting, extra space storage along Kingston does have a fence in the front yard, as well as those nearby dealership, the satellite storage lots to the east. As I said, the fence proposed by the appellant is a 6-foot tall black vinyl coated chain fence. Staff believes that in order to preserve the highest standards of development within the US 36 overlay district, a 6-foot black decorative fence should be required along Kingston Street frontage. That decorative fence would be more durable, more aesthetically pleasing, and more consistent with the surrounding land uses in that area. However, we do not have any objections to the other portions of the fence remaining as black vinyl chain link. Here's an example of a black decorative fence. This is just a random one I got off the internet, but I figured it would be good to provide you with a visual of what staff would expect in that front yard. We believe that there is a practical difficulty in that the UDO standard doesn't consider this unique type of land use, but that it may be necessary for the property owners to protect their merchandise. And again, the intent of the standard is to maintain and preserve the aesthetics of US 36, and we find that that intent is met through the condition that staff has recommended that a decorative fence be installed. We find the proposal to meet all of the required findings of fact, and we recommend approval of the variance and development standards, subject to two conditions. One, that the portion of the fence abutting the Kingston Street frontage shall be a 6-foot black decorative fence as approved by the zoning administrator. And two, a fence permit shall be obtained prior to the erection of the fence. And
Any questions for staff?
I can answer questions on that.
One question is, I don't know if it's true now, but are all those decorative fences along there the same style?
There is one of the dealership fences that is not a decorative fence. The extra space storage has a fence, and fence is required for the new Ray Skillman Hyundai fence.
But are they the same style, or everybody gets to pick and choose what they want?
They are essentially the same style. They're black decorative fences, yes.
Any other questions for staff? Now would the petitioner like to?
Sure. Again, Andy Colt. I do have Dale Cruz here with me this evening. He's the project engineer here. We're representing Sudan Trucking Company, LLC. Ian, do you have my slides?
There you are.
I'm just going to build a little bit. I'm sure you're familiar with where we're at, but I'll just, we've got we're between Dan Jones and 900 over here. Oh, thank you.
Right, and then there's a laser there.
Oh, yeah, sorry to jump on your toes there. I didn't know you had a laser. So we're along the railroad corridor down here, and you've got the row of dealerships there. 3.14 acres is what we've got. I put this in there. I think Ian had one of those just to show you the surrounding zoning. These are all I-2, and then you got the C2 offsite there a little bit. We're within tier 3 of the overlay district, the US 36 overlay district, which is relevant for the fence, as I'll talk about. Petitioner is going to be establishing as mentioned, he's got a DPR coming up. He's establishing a semi-truck maintenance facility. So he's going to be doing repair work on big vehicles. As part of that and submitting the DPR, these are two issues that came out of those discussions. Our initial thought was that the gravel parking lot might be a waiver issue. In working with Bill Peoples, we did find the relevant part of the ordinance, which you heard does indicate that this board does have the authority to grant a special that gravel use through special exception process. So it is contemplated in the ordinance. And then in terms of the fence, the goal there is a safety reason. You're going to have big rigs forward, backward, and turning around in there, and we don't want to have any unknown people walking around in there. So it's a safety issue and also security to keep their inventory safe. In terms of the special exception, I already pointed it out. He had a nicer view than I did, but again, concrete as you come in off Kingston. So we're, as mentioned, we're quite a ways off the road here, and we don't get to the gravel till back here. So everything around the building will be concrete, little asphalt there for employee parking. And then the proposal is for gravel where the stalls are located. There are a couple of properties in the vicinity. So we are right here across the street. As mentioned, you've got the all-terrain landscaping property. The one correction I'll make is Ian mentioned that the entry drive is stone. Actually, that whole lot is stone there out front. And then, as mentioned, Phoenix Fabricating, similar type of thing with the big vehicles and the equipment they've got. The desire is to not tear up the other surfaces. You saw in the staff report, dust control and aesthetics. There were some comments on there. I think I'll just reiterate in terms of dust control, our intention would be, when necessary, wetting that area down. We do have let me get to a different site here. We do have a 30-foot buffer here on the east. We've got our building, concrete pad. So this goes down more than halfway down the east property line. So in terms of abutting the east property line, this is the only gravel area as you get close to the railroad corridor. And we've got a 30-foot buffer there, and we've got a substantial tree line that will be going on around the perimeter all over it, but certainly on that east side. Aesthetics was the other thing mentioned, and as pointed out, you know, between the islands, you did see in the staff aerial all the trees that are going to be in there. So from Kingston, you're going to have a pretty difficult time, even as you're passing, discerning that you've got gravel as far back as it sits, and with all the trees on the frontage there, in addition to the fence. So aesthetically, we don't believe there's going to be a problem there. Staff had one proposed condition regarding dust control, and that is perfectly acceptable to us. As mentioned, that's already a performance standard in the ordinance, but it's basically being reiterated as a proposed condition, and that's okay. Acceptable. In terms of the fence within the front yard, I mentioned the overlay district because, if I'm not mistaken, I think I'm correct on this. Outside of the overlay district, industrial properties can have fences in the front yard. That the driver of that in this location, and you do have all those I-2 zone properties, but because it's in the overlay, it then fences are not permitted. So it's kind of a catch-22 because this is a nice I-2 use. I think the town would preferably like to see it along the railroad and out of the way. It's substantially far off. It's in Tier 3. It's quite a ways off of 36. And yet it's a use that would generally necessitate fencing for the security and the safety, and but because it's in the overlay, then that kicks in. So I think that's a relevant point with regard to the overlay. As I said, common for industrial uses of certain types to have that type of security fencing. As mentioned, the self-storage place has it. The dealerships have it. Most of them are very similar looking, and I think that's what we would have in mind, is something very similar to what. Only difference on what Ian showed you is this is capped off here, and has continued with some spikes. So, but we'll work with the town if there's a preference on, hey, we've got this over here. That's fine. And in terms of the proposed conditions with fence permit, obviously we're okay with that. And then with this frontage, I think that's a pretty sharp look that's down there on the south side by the railroad, and we'll continue that on our property. Both requests we think are reasonably, well, very much in line with an industrial use such as this. It's a permitted use. And we're meeting the other the architectural standards, but also the site standards for the parking lot. And so both of these are, for this type of use, are reasonable. Both of the effects of any type of concern for staff will be mitigated. We are pleased to be here with favorable staff recommendation for both proposals, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Before we get into questions, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. And this is the public hearing for SE 23-04, the sedan trucking gravel lot, and VAR 23-10 sedan trucking fence. Is anyone signed up to speak?
Hello, John Lazaro, 8459 Kingston Street. I'm the next door neighbor. I'm fine with the fence. I said my issue is with the gravel parking lot. The businesses mentioned that we're all grandfathered. Their older business has been there. I'm a newer business, been there 3 years. We were required to pave our parking lot. I did ask for a waiver at that time for our very back parking lot because of tracked vehicles and was granted that waiver. But looking at this, I think, in all fairness, the same should apply. It's visible, it's the aesthetics, there's the tracking issue onto the road, and that's what I'm looking at. So I just think, if maybe you want to grant a partial waiver, hey, the very back block can be gravel if you want to go that route, and the front has to be paved, there's an option. I'm just asking that they pave the lot.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else sign up to speak?
No.
And would anyone else like to speak during the public hearing? Then we will close the public hearings.
Can you bring up the slide that you had a better slide with the concrete and asphalt showing? I mean, in terms of, I do understand we deal with, I've dealt more with this issue at the county level. And one of the issues that we typically discuss with John Ayers, the county engineer, is the tracking and the, spillage of gravel onto the road, which is why this is typically a requirement, nowhere near this kind of length that I've ever dealt with personally. I mean, typically it's an apron here at the road coming back, whether it's 30 feet, 50 feet, whatever. I do recognize that we've got bigger trucks coming in, but with all of this here and then coming in and out of the maintenance building, you're gonna lose your debris before you get out on the road. And I did note, as Mr. Lazaro said, if this were his property, it's this area back in the southeast that he obtained a waiver for, and I would assume for similar reason with equipment that generally you don't want to have on the or materials on the pavement. So that's what we're looking at. I think it's pretty common knowledge that if you're driving big rigs on that and coming in and out the same direction of these spaces repeatedly and turning those wheels, I mean, it's just not going to last of any length of time. So this is just a very common aspect of that type of parking lot use. Yeah, the other part's not relevant.
So to your point there, how is that different in use in the traffic pattern than what we see around warehouses that are paved or have asphalt? Well,
I think you tend to have more of a circular drive around those locations. You may have a circulation pattern. Here, the whole purpose here is to be constantly digging these in and out in the same space. I mean, if you're turning a truck into that space on asphalt, I mean, there's no way that lasts. We do have, we've got some studies that Dale and I have looked at. I mean, he's a little more versed on it than I, if you wanted to hear any of that. Some of the numbers that they found in terms of what I'm getting at there is, the weight of a truck on that surface is equivalent to whatever it is, 300 cars, and the weight, and then when you start turning the wheel and they get into what's the equivalent of a passenger vehicle, and it's just astounding how much it tears that up.
So I'm with you on that. I'm just trying to understand that. Well, how's that different than when you go down the warehouse row there and you see thousands, hundreds of trucks around the warehouse going in and out every day? And then, I don't know how many trucks would be in and out of here every day. If you're talking about a volume of 50 trucks every day going in and out, okay, well, I'm maybe with you, but if it's a maintenance facility, I wouldn't assume that there'd be that much volume of ingress, egress, or moving around the lot. So if you have those statistics of what the volume is, I'd like to see those.
Yeah, I don't have statistics on what his anticipated. It's a newer business, so I know you're not going to have 50 a day coming in and out right off the bat.
Right.
I can tell you that, but do you know that number off the top of your head? 28. I was going to say that'd be the objective.
So Ian, if I could, I got a question for you. And this is on the special exception. I think this is possibly significant to criteria 4 and 5, where we talk about being served by essential public utilities such as highway, streets. And then will the use create excessive additional requirements at public expense? What is the weight limit on Kingston?
I'm not sure of the weight limit on Kingston.
And I'm embarrassed. I should know that, but is that road even rated for truck traffic?
I would assume so. Yeah, this is an industrially zoned district. I can't say for certain yes or no, but my assumption is that yes.
And some of these special exception requirements, I believe, are more related to a special exception use request. I mean, keeping in mind here, this is a permitted use. It's not so in terms of the weight of that road, we're not seeking to operate a business that has trucks there. And I have no idea. I would hope that was taken into account since everything up and down that street is industrially zoned. But again, I think some of these are related to me coming in here and saying we would like to do this use and we think this spot's appropriate. And then you get more into services and that type of thing.
No, I absolutely agree. It's industrially zoned, but most of the uses we have back there we're dealing mainly with car lots and maybe a truck delivery every now and then. I'm wondering about if we've got semi trucks going in and out of there, what is the legal route for them to use?
I don't have the answer to that, but I will say that there are car haulers that go on that street every day that are full of cars. And it has never been brought to my attention that there is any sort of issue with heavy vehicles on that road. I don't know it to be a restricted road. I don't know it not to be.
So your point's an interesting one because I think when the Kingston Street was developed, there was a vision of different type of businesses being developed along that street than what has occurred at this point. And it is more of an industrial use there. So I think what we've heard from the petitioner that it's an accepted use. I think that maybe to the point the town may have to look at the streets in the future here. Yeah, I'm looking at more where I'm focused on is that if you got a gravel lot and maintaining that street and getting the spillage, because I don't know. I hear what you say as far as like the losing the material before it gets to the street, but I don't know how long material and debris stays on a truck's tires in the crevices. They got big treads. The point of is that you got parking close to the street, so you won't have much concrete to be going across to lose that debris. So that's where and I don't see how this is different than a warehouse area where they pave those areas. It's not gravel. I'm not entirely, I don't feel like this is a practical difficulty. It feels like it's a desire to have it gravel as opposed to being paved.
Well, and Ian, correct me if I'm wrong here. For the special exception, we don't need a practical difficulty.
You do not need one.
Only for the variance.
The
variance for the fence.
The ordinance instructs you to consider a practical difficulty. That's that. Do you have the clicker? The ordinance, chapter 6.11E3, instructs you to consider the practical difficulty in developing a paved lot on the property. Location of the proposed gravel lot and the period the gravel lot will be used. However, that would not be a statutory requirement that be met in order for approval.
So if I might, because that's a good discussion to have. I mean, in terms of the criteria for the special exception that are required statutory criteria, is it listed as a special exception use? It is through 6.11E3. Is it detrimental to, or will it endanger the public health, safety, and welfare? We believe it has minimal effect on that. I guess if you wanted to raise the dust issue, we've talked about mitigating that, but otherwise, it's not a health, safety, or welfare issue. Is it injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties or substantially diminish property values? You know, in an industrial area, that's not an uncommon use or element of a development, and you've already got gravel lots along that road. So I don't think we're diminishing anything that's already there. And then if you look at 4, 5, and 6, that goes back to my comment earlier about really being more appropriate for a requested use. But in any event, will it be served adequately by essential facilities and services? Yes. Will it create additional requirements for public facilities? No. And have there been a previous appeals? No. So just looking at the statutory criteria, I believe we clearly meet every one of those.
So, and I stand corrected. I mean, I so maybe use the wrong terms there. But before I get into criterion 5, so can you go over what properties are gravel lots along Kingston Street so we have an idea of
His picture, because he had a large, more zoomed out. I think there's another one. There we go. All right, this is maybe a little difficult to see, but just catty corner across from Kingston Street, we have all-terrain landscaping. It's a landscaping company with a gravel lot. They store heavy machinery on there as well as other materials there. Next is CSX Railroad.
That's on the other side of the railroad track, so.
Correct. However, it is predominantly gravel.
I'm going to ask around Kingston Street because anything south of the tracks to me is a different area.
Got it. Next, I think it may be out of view, but we have Phoenix Fabricators. Is that it there? Yeah, that is it there. This is Phoenix Fabricators here, and they have a large gravel lot on which they store heavy machinery and large vehicles.
Multiple lots there that are gravel.
In addition to that, there are several homes here that have gravel driveways and a long gravel drive that runs to US 36 along this property here. Don't know how relevant that is, but that is all of the gravel that I'm aware of.
Yeah, Mr. Guckenberger, you do have multiple parcels. I can't speak headed south, but when I was on Kingston looking north, there's multiple parcels that have gravel drives that go all the way out to the road. So actually different than what we're proposing. Dale Cruz asked me if he could speak to you guys here real quick.
I'm Dale Cruz, Cruz Consulting, 7384 Business Center Drive in Avon. And I understand your question about how's this different than a big box building. And I think the difference is substantial. I don't think you can even make a comparison between the two. And the reason why I say that is because the big box buildings, oftentimes those buildings are 1/4 mile long. And oftentimes those buildings themselves, just the buildings, cover 20 acres. This site is 3.4 acres in total. And the detention pond takes up probably nearly 1/2 acre of that at the south end. So you're left with maybe 3 acres of developable ground. The area between, can you go to the site plan?
Yeah.
So the trucks that are running along the side of one of the big box buildings, they have a quarter of a mile to negotiate and navigate and turn into their respective, wherever they're going, backing up to or pulling into. And in this particular scenario right here, there's 100 feet right there. So the turning movements are sharp in this parking lot every single time a turning movement is made in here. Into each one of those parking spaces, they're making an abrupt 90-degree bend. And I think that's what the difference is that this lot is, in scope, is a different animal than the big box buildings are. And this parking lot is going to see every single time a vehicle backs into one of these spaces or pulls out of one of these spaces, it's going to see a turning movement. And tandem axle vehicles, when they turn, they slide. One of the axles slides. One of the axles on the trailer slides, and one of the axles on the truck slides because they're parallel with each other. And when they turn, they just slide, one of them. And so I think that they're just, this scenario is completely different than what you're going to have or what you do have at a big box building. And then this distance right here is about 120 feet from the edge of the road to there is about 120 feet. And I think that will do a good job of dropping most of the gravel or stone off of the tires of the vehicles. And I was looking at this too while Andy was talking. I think we could push this concrete area over to the front edge of these parking stalls. I mean, it doesn't help a whole lot, but there's probably another, I don't know, there's probably another 10 or 15 feet there that we could push west to the front edge of those to help to minimize the amount of stone that gets pulled out onto the concrete apron before you head out onto the street.
Is there any reason why you then couldn't push it all the way to the edge of the property? Because the turning radius would be on the concrete to move into those slots.
You mean here?
Yeah. So your front half of your property is on concrete.
I understand your question. And I think that could be, I think we could do that. So basically what you're saying is take this line right here and push it west to the west edge.
Yeah.
I think that can be done.
To interject, I did forget one gravel parking lot because it was mentioned earlier, and it's Mr. Lazara's lot. He has a small gravel parking area on the southwest portion of his property that was approved by special exception. It's entirely fenced in, and it's maintained used just by the owner.
Okay. I just asked that question to see what the possibilities were for our consideration.
So all that ends up being about another 96 feet. That's about 96 feet. This would be about 96 feet of concrete from here to there would be about a 96 feet of width.
Okay. Thank you.
We can make a commitment to do that. I can proactively make that commitment. Take that over to the side.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that for something for our consideration.
Also, Angel wanted me to remind you guys to turn your microphones on.
Well, and I did want to say, with respect to the variance, I thought the staff report did a fairly decent job of explaining the whole thing. As far as practical difficulty goes, I don't necessarily fully buy the excuse that, well, because the ordinance didn't contemplate it. But by the same token, we've granted so many variances for the same thing that now by not granting it, we're creating a economic disadvantage for that property. So I don't have any problem with the variance. With respect to the special exception, yeah, the commitment makes us a lot better. I'd still really like to know what that road is rated for. I mean, criteria. Will the use create excessive additional requirements at public expense for public facilities and services? And if that thing's not rated for trucks, we're going to be replacing that road real quick. I'd really like an answer on that. I don't know how we get it quick, but.
I assume that it is rated. It's a arterial street.
And Ian, I should
not
know
a local.
This. I'm embarrassed I don't know it. And yeah, I know there's car carriers back there. I've also seen car carriers park in the suicide lanes in the little 36 too.
No person shall drive, operate, or cause to be operated on any streets within the town other than US Highway 36, 267, or Ronald Reagan. Any vehicle used for transportation of goods or property having gross vehicle weight with or without load greater than 5 tons. Enters the town. Drivers of such vehicles whose gross weight exceeds 5 tons may deliver or pick up goods or property at places not located on US Highway 36, State Road 267, or Ronald Reagan Parkway, provided such vehicles are operated only by the shortest route possible between such highway and place of delivery or pickup. So that basically just says that they take the shortest route to their location.
So you're confident we're okay on this?
I'm very confident.
You're very confident, okay.
Yes.
I trust you.
Well, I think it's good this lot's been vacant for a while and it's good use of the property. I do like the additional cement or asphalt.
Any further discussion? If there's none, we'll entertain a motion. Let's do these one at a time.
We're going to do the first one, 04. Okay. With modifications. I move that we approve SE 23-04 sedan trucking gravel lot, a special exception to allow for a gravel off-street parking area for proposed truck parking and maintenance facility. But with the caveat that we're reducing the size of the gravel than what originally was proposed and adding 96 feet of asphalt. Would that be?
Say we'll hard surface that front apron directly over to the west.
Yeah. Can we say condition and not caveat?
Yep.
Because it's a condition, right?
Yes. Condition of approval.
Okay, since, so we're going to allow for a gravel off-street parking area for a proposed truck parking and maintenance facility with a hard surface condition for the additional 96 feet. Since it has satisfied all the requirements for special exceptions under the state law and subject to the approved findings of fact. The approval shall be subject to the conditions outlined within the published staff report in terms of dust control and things.
Second.
Well, motion by Mrs. Inman, a second by Mr. Guckenberger. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Paul Guckenberger,
4.
Ann Inman,
4.
Marcy Tashler, 4, Marcus Turner.
4. And now we'll entertain a motion on the variance.
I move that we approve VAR 23-10 Sudan trucking fence, a variance of development standards to allow for a fence in a front yard within Tier 3 of the U.S. Highway 36 overlay zoning district, since it has satisfied all the requirements for special exceptions under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact. This approval shall be subject to the conditions outlined within the published staff report on file.
A motion by Mrs. Tashler. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Inman. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Paul Guckenberger,
4.
Ann Inman,
4.
Marcy Tashler, 4, Marcus Turner.
4.
Thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Do we have any other business, Ian?
We have no other business.
In that case, we are adjourned. Thank you.